Hey everyone.
Hey guys.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor live video. Tonight we're doing a live course member Q&A. We've gathered some questions over the last week or so from you guys, any questions that you had, and we're also going to answer any questions that you have joining on here live. So Whitney's going to introduce us, and I guess I actually don't have to get this video shared. So I think we got about, how many questions?
I don't know, a couple, at least a dozen.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're doing our same introductions like we normally do for our regular live videos, but this one is just for our course member group. We got questions from you guys throughout the week. Those of you guys that are currently in our travel therapy course, some of you guys sent us messages, commented on Facebook. So thank you guys who sent in questions. I know some of you guys can't watch live, but you'll watch later. If you are watching live, feel free to say hey in the comments. You're welcome to ask us any questions that you would like to ask us live. We want this to be, more in depth. Obviously, you guys all have access to our course, which has everything that we could think of from A to Z for how to get started and how to be financially successful as a traveler. But inevitably, questions do come up. We definitely want to help you guys with any questions you have about like current scenarios that you're going through as you're on contract, if you're working with recruiters, if you're doing interviews. We have plenty of time to talk to you guys through all that. We also got quite a few questions about finance things because a lot of you guys may have already started traveling, but maybe you have more in-depth questions about getting into your finances and that sort of thing.
Yeah, one thing I really like about these questions, we used to do like open to everybody, and we'd get a lot of questions that were extremely basic, but you guys have really good questions that are making us think. So it's nice to get some more in-depth questions and past the basics, and we can talk about a lot of these things and go more in depth, which is nice.
Yep. And we will share this video later to our podcast so that more of our audience can listen and hear the answers. But these questions are only from our course group members because we wanted to take a little more time to give feedback and answers to our course group members. All right, so we'll dive into some questions that we got earlier this week. So one of our course group members said they're starting their first contract on Monday. Congratulations. Wanted to know some special considerations for starting your first day of a travel contract.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the most important thing that I've learned over time for starting your first week is that expect to be kind of stressed out on the first week. Every time, I don't know if it's just me, but every time when we go into an assignment, I feel a little stressed, like a little overwhelmed. There's a lot of new things. I usually feel like it's unmanageable or something in the beginning. I don't know. I feel like the first week is kind of tough. And so if I go in expecting that, then I don't feel so bad about it. And the thing about it, not every assignment is like this, but if I go in expecting that it's going to be like that, then I'm not so, stressed out or like upset if it does feel that way. But the important thing to remember is after that first week or maybe 2 weeks, it usually gets exponentially easier. And there's been so many times where I've started an assignment, I felt real stressed out or overwhelmed the first week, and then by like 6 or 7 weeks in, I'm like, wow, why did I feel that way? This is really easy. Everything's laid back. I feel like I could stay here. And the difference is that as a traveler, when you get to a new assignment, you jump in and you have all new patients and coworkers and the new documentation system, it just feels difficult. But once you get past that, it gets easier and easier. And then I really think that every subsequent assignment gets easier too because you get used to that process. You know what it's going to be like. So just expect the first week that it's going to feel difficult and that it's going to get easier.
Yeah, and I would just say, go into your first day open-minded because it may go great. It may be a little bit challenging. You may feel a little overwhelmed, but every assignment is going to be different. So some of them, you might feel really welcomed. You might have a great orientation. They might really be easing you into it. Some of them, the staff's going to be really welcoming. On the flip side, some of them, the staff may not be quite as welcoming. Maybe they're really busy and they're really stressed and they just need your help. And maybe they're going to make you hit the ground running. So it's hard to know exactly what to expect your first day. Hopefully you try to get a little bit of an insight about what the ramp up time was going to be and the training was going to be and what your first day might look like during your phone interview. That's your best opportunity to prepare for what you're walking into. But you never really know. You might get there and it could be completely different than what you think. But hopefully it'll go well. Go into it with an open mind. Just know that you're there to help them. They hired you for a reason. And so don't feel guilty. A lot of people get there and they're like, oh gosh, I know they're paying me so much money to be here. And I really wanted this contract. So if I feel like they gave me a lot of work on the first day, I'm just going to stay here for 10 hours until I can get it done. Don't do that. Just say the amount of time that you're supposed to clock in and you're supposed to clock out, and just know, okay, even if you didn't get everything done they asked of you that first day, it's fine. Go in the next day and regroup and talk to the manager and keep an open line of communication. But definitely just feel it out for that first day and that first week. If after the first week it's not exactly what you expected, it's they're asking too much of you productivity wise, it might be a good opportunity to have a conversation with your recruiter, also to have a conversation with the manager, just to manage those expectations and say, this isn't what I signed up for, the productivity, I'm not able to meet it, that sort of thing. But hopefully your first day will go really well. Just go into it, try to make a good first impression, and hopefully they'll be really excited to have you, and it'll go really smoothly.
Yeah, you always get a lot more efficient. So if it feels like you're not able to keep up or the productivity is too difficult in the beginning, give it time, because you always get more efficient as time goes on.
Yeah, but every assignment will be different. Hopefully you have a great first day at your new assignment. But as always, if you have any questions, if it's not going the way you thought, let us know and reach out.
Yeah, and I don't want to act like every assignment is really stressful, because we've had some that are extremely easy the first week. So it's not always going to be like that. But if I go in thinking that it's going to be, then it makes me feel a little better. It makes me feel like I'm prepared if things don't go perfectly.
That's one way to look at it for sure.
That's how I always do it.
Yeah, I usually don't get that stressed. I always get like a little bit nervous going in the first day, but most of our assignments have gone really well. We've had one or two where they kind of threw us to the wolves the first day, but most of them have been really good.
Whitney's a lot better at small talk and asking for help and things like that. I'm not good at that. So I think that's why sometimes I feel more overwhelmed than you do.
Yeah, that could be it. Okay, so great first question. So we had another question come from someone who's had been traveling for a little while now, and she's had a few of her contracts canceled. A couple of them have been like towards the end of the contract. They ended her contract early, maybe just a couple weeks early or a month early. She also had one that canceled before she ever started. And so she's been feeling really discouraged because she's had like 2 or 3 contract cancellations. And so she said, how do you find stability in traveling after multiple canceled contracts? How can you prevent being canceled?
So I would say the first thing, we've already told her this, but just to reiterate to everyone, it's not that common to have contracts canceled. So I think this is mostly bad luck. We've said this multiple times, but we have, traveled on and off for 7 years each now, and between the two of us. So I think we're at 15 years of combined traveling on and off, and we've had 1 contract canceled. So it's not that common to get contracts canceled. There are some ways, though, some questions you can ask during an interview to know whether or not it's more or less likely to get a contract canceled. I would say one thing to ask about, one of the important questions to ask in your interview, is why they need a traveler. So you have to think about, if you're going to a facility and they say they need a traveler because they're not able to hire a permanent person, that means they're trying to hire a permanent person. They're just bringing you in temporarily, which means that if they happen to hire someone during your contract's going to get canceled. So if you've had a streak of bad luck with contracts, I would ask about that, and I would try to go for contracts where that's less likely, and those are going to be ones like a maternity leave or a short-term disability or something where there's a clear need for a traveler and for a set period of time. Because you're very unlikely to get canceled if someone's out for maternity leave. They need that person's going to come back, and they need someone to fill in during the time when they're gone. So it's very unlikely your contract's going to get ended early. Whereas, like I said, if it's a contract where they're trying to hire and they do hire, then you're stuck there.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the way that a lot of contracts are. A lot of them are trying to fill a void until they can hire a permanent person. And so you're not always going to be able to avoid that, but we have found that quite often the rural locations are less likely to find a permanent candidate right away, and they're more likely to keep you on even if they do hire a permanent person, and they might want some overlap until that person ramps up and gets started. So we've had some pretty good luck, especially if it's a contract where they say they maybe, like if they talk about during the interview that there could even be an opportunity for you to extend. Well, that's a good sign right away, because they're like, we probably are going to need you for a little while. We've been having trouble finding someone.